Hey, good morning. My name is Michal Kazimiercsak. I'm working for more than 10 years already at European Union Intellectual Property Office. From the very beginning in the Observatory of Infringement of Intellectual Property Rights. And one of the objectives of the observatory set out in the Regulation 386/2012 was to get more information about the contribution of intellectual property rights to the EU economy, but also helping the policymakers in assessing the scope and scale of the infringement, and also to provide some evidence that would make the fight against the infringement of intellectual property rights more effective. So what was the situation at the very beginning when we started our work? We had some anecdotal evidence regarding international trade in counterfeit goods, but there was no systematic quantitative assessment of its scale and various aspects of this phenomenon. That's why from the very beginning we decided to team up with OECD, international organization based in Paris, because they had some expertise in assessing the scale of IPR infringement in international trade. And we team up with them to enhance our factual evidence on trade in counterfeit goods. So since then, because in 2008, OECD produced the first report which tried to describe the phenomenon of infringement of intellectual property rights. And based on the methodology from 2008 study, we produced, let's say, 3 flagship studies when we tried to put the number to the maximum number of value of counterfeit in international trade. So we produced 3 such reports in 2016, 2019, and the last one in June last year. So this methodology relies heavily on EU IPO OECD enforcement database. And this consists of the data on seizures provided by European Commission, DG Taxud, also US Custom and Border Protection Office, and WCO, World Custom Organization. So this database consists mainly of the data of the custom seizures of counterfeit goods on the borders. It has the global scope and relatively long time span because it dates back to 2013. Of course, data is incomplete. It comes from various sources, so we have to invest a lot of time in harmonizing this. But this is the most complete data source on the trade in counterfeit products. So to give you just an example, the database for 2017-2019 for each year of this period contains the total number of custom seizures which consistently exceeds 130,000 observations for all over the world. And based on this ingredient, this information on the seizures of counterfeit goods, OECD devised the so-called GTRIC methodology. It stands for General Trade-Related Index of Counterfeiting. It allows for calculation of a relative likelihood for each product category and each export country to be, for the products to be the subject of counterfeit, for export country to be a provenance country of the counterfeit goods. And GTRIC assigns a relative propensity of a given provenance economy to export infringing products of specific category. So since then, we produced more than 11 reports. So each report consists of estimation of a scale of illicit trade in counterfeit goods, but also provide information about the main provenance economies and products mostly targeted by counterfeiters. But also in between of those flagship reports, we produce the monographs, shedding light on some important aspects of international trade in counterfeit goods. And of course, we complement this database, this seizures database with other relevant sources of data to provide the quantitative assessment of the counterfeit. So in accordance with the last report that we produced in June 2021, we, together with OECD, we assessed that the value of fakes in international trade could be as much as 414 billion euro, so which is the same as 2.5% of the world trade. When we move to EU, when we focus on EU, it's even bigger because it amounts to 5.8% of total EU imports, and it may be as high as 119 billion euro. So also, yeah, it's quite an abstract. Those numbers are quite abstract. So just to give you the scale, it's as much as GDP of Portugal, for example. And before, in 2016, we assessed that those numbers could be even higher. However, the rise in the trade, in the manufacturing goods, was not as high as the value of trade in the primary materials and energy sources. So that's why the scale is a little bit lower in 2019 than it used to be in 2016. So as regards the provenance countries, and you will see on this graph the main provenance countries, but also in the blue you see the share of the seized value in the total value of seizures, and in gray the share of customs seizures, so within the total number of the seizures, each individual seizure. So it is not a surprise that China plays a major role still, and it plays major role in terms of value than in the sheer number of the seizures. Then Hong Kong, which is also the part of China, and then other countries play lower role, like Turkey, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, Taiwan, Malaysia, Vietnam. It's mostly Southeast Asia, because also those countries are the big manufacturing hubs. And not all of those countries are the origin of the counterfeit goods. We have produced the report in 2017 when we tracked the routes of the counterfeit goods from the producing countries through the transport countries. And some of them, Singapore or United Arab Emirates, are just the transfer countries. So, of course, the counterfeiters are very clever people, and they try to hide the real origin of those goods, and try to hide also the information that would allow the custom officers or other enforcement authorities to track those goods. And they use very complex routes to deliver the counterfeit goods to the final destinations. Here we have the comparison between 2016 and 2019. Blue reflects 2016 share of China as the provenance country. 2019, it's the most recent statistics. So we can see that China is still on the top of the list of the provenance countries, with slight decrease in terms of the share of global seizures. However, Hong Kong share decreased by about 10%. While the role of Turkey, Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, or Russia increased. However, notwithstanding those changes, China remains by far the most prominent provenance country of counterfeit goods still. In terms of the most targeted products, again, in gray, you can see the share of customs seizures, the number. In blue, the share of seized value. In terms of the number of the seizures, the most targeted products are the footwear, clothing, articles of leather, those that we can see on the open air markets. However, in terms of value of seized goods, The watches dominate, articles of leather, also vehicles parts, clothing and jewelry. And here is the comparison between 2016 to 2019, as very similar to the one that we did for the provenance countries. And what is interesting to note here is that in terms of the global customs seizures cases, perfumery and cosmetics, toys and games are on the rise. And those products are potentially creating safety and health issues. And this was subject to our specific reports that we devoted, first report that we released in March 2020 when we focused on the counterfeit pharmaceuticals products. And we assessed that the trade in counterfeit fake pharmaceuticals could be as high as $4.4 billion worldwide, which is approximately 2.2% of total worldwide imports in pharmaceutical products. And as you can see from this graph, the counterfeit pharmaceuticals span the whole range of the medicines, from antibiotics to painkillers, anti-malarian pharmaceuticals. So all kinds of medicines could be subject of counterfeiting. And of course, it creates serious threats and serious risks for health and safety. Also, we produced in March 2022, we published another report focusing on dangerous fakes. So it was titled Trade in Counterfeit Goods that pose health, safety, and environmental risks. So we looked on the products that pose potential health and safety risk within a broad scope. So the products that, if they are original, they need to meet specific safety standards before entering into market. And also the focus groups, more narrow groups of the most dangerous products. So the most dangerous, even if they are produced by the legitimate producers, but those products are subject to frequent recalls because of the safety risks. And for example, they are most frequently subject to recalls in systems such as SafetyGate. They use SafetyGate. So we assessed that up to 70,000 seizures of the potentially most dangerous products between 2017 and 2019. So trade of potentially most dangerous categories could amount as to 16% of global trade in counterfeit goods. And of course, those products are especially targeted by the counterfeiters because they provide the high profit margins. Of course, legitimate producers, to be able to sell those products categories on the EU market, they have to invest a lot of money, a lot of time in all the safety tests and to make sure that the products meet often very high safety standards. And of course, counterfeiters don't care about it. Yeah, so they're able to provide those products, of course, much cheaper because they don't care what they put inside the bottles. Let's say. Also, the risk of detection and prosecution is very low for them. They face the weak penalties, not comparable to, for example, the trade in drugs. And also. It's very easy to deceive the consumer, yeah, because they don't know. So, for example, if you take the pill, you don't know what's inside it, and it could be very dangerous for the health of the consumers. And of course, apart of the loss of sales, jobs, and taxes, those products are very harmful because there is an additional negative impact on health. But also additional costs of disposal of counterfeit goods. Often there is no information available on the substances used to produce counterfeit goods. So, for example, counterfeit pesticides. And then the authorities or the producers of the original goods face the cost of the disposal of those counterfeits, and very often they don't know how to treat them, yeah, because they don't have any information about what's inside. In terms of the nationality of the brands infringed, we can see here that majority of the brands that are most frequently infringed are seated in United States, but there are a lot of also brands, a lot of legitimate producers with seat in the European Union, in France, Germany, Italy, but also in other countries outside of European Union, Switzerland, for example. However, in EU 27, so around 50%, so half of the seizures affect the brands, the legitimate producers located in the European Union. So, what are the conveyance methods? So, what are the most frequently used transport methods? And here we have like two statistics which present quite different picture, because if we are talking about the share of global customs seizures, so individual seizures, the majority, above 60% of those seizures are related to mail, snail mail, the normal mail. However, if we are talking about the value of the seized good, so the majority are related to the sea transport. And then in the later part of my presentation, I will focus on those two conveyance methods. I will focus here on the detentions related to online trade, because those detentions are mostly associated with the mail, snail mail, the normal mail. And again, if we look into the tensions related to online sale, when we focus on the percentage of the observations, so the individual seizures, so more than a half of the tensions are related to online sale. And this, so I have to say this, that those statistics come from and cover only European Union, because in the copies in the Digitaxud database, which store the information about the seizures, we have the rubric which custom officers can tick, and it means that the specific seizure effectuated on the border of the European Union was associated with online trade. So there are some additional documents that they have access to that, and they are able to say, okay, this seizure is related to online sale. However, if we look into the value of the seized good, so we can see that only close to 15% are related to online sale. And this is because those seizures are mostly, and we will see it later on, are related to mail. So yeah, there are only as much as you can pack into the parcel. And of course, if you seize the entire container, maritime container, the number of the items that you seize is much larger, and the value of those counterfeit goods are much larger. And yeah, this is the statistics that shows what I was talking about when we look into the seizures that are not related to online sale. Almost 50% are related to sea vessels. However, if we focus only on the seizures related to e-commerce, to online sale, the majority, more than 80%, are related to mail and post. And this is also important because until recently, the price of mailing a parcel from China to New York or to the EU was lower than mailing a parcel from neighboring state or between EU member states, because there was this UPU, Universal Postal Organization, which is the also institution of the United Nations. They had the preferential rules applying to developing countries, and until very recently, China was also treated as a developing country with very preferential rates, which made it much cheaper to send a package from China to, let's say, Lithuania than from Poland to Lithuania. And here we have the statistics about the countries which are involved, or the provenance countries of the goods which are related to e-commerce. And on the left-hand side, we have the provenance country. In total detentions, we see that China dominates, but not as much as the online sales of the counterfeit goods. So we can see, comparing the two graphs, that China, Singapore, and Malaysia play bigger role in e-commerce trade of counterfeit goods than in trade in counterfeit goods in general. Whereas, for example, for Hong Kong, the role is more important in case of shipments not related to e-commerce. Also, here we have the statistics about the products that are most likely to be related to e-commerce, the counterfeit products that are sold with usage of e-commerce solution. So this is the share of detentions, cases related to online sales within the product category. So if you look into the graph on the left-hand side, you can see that more than 75% of all the seizures cases that were stopped on the border were related to the e-commerce. However, if we move to the right hand side and if we look into the value of those goods, so we can see that the highest category is vehicle parts, and it's nowhere near those 75%. It's only 35%. Yeah, because again, it's not the same if you seize the individual parcel than the whole container of those goods. Also, here we can see that the share of the footwear, perfumery, and cosmetics and pharmaceutical products in seizures related to e-commerce tend to be higher than in seizures not related to e-commerce transactions. So those are the product categories that are typically sent, they are sold via those internet platforms and sent to European Union by parcels. Yeah, footwear, perfumery, and cosmetics, and again, pharmaceutical products, so the very, very dangerous product categories. And here, again, we come back to the slide presenting the conveyance methods, the transport methods. And now I would like us to focus more on the sea transport, because this is the mode of transport where the most valuable counterfeits are being sent. So this mode of transport is responsible for the majority of the value of the counterfeit goods. And why it's that? Because, of course, standard container is perhaps the most important and most impactful innovation of the 20th century. Only between 2000 and 2020, the maritime transport, the volume transported by this mode of transport rose worldwide 300%, and in the EU more than 150%. Also, whereas in 2000, the largest container ship had a capacity of 3,000 standard 20-foot container, nowadays there are ships that are able to transport more than 20,000 standard containers. And over all those years, the emphasis was on the speed, efficiency, cost reduction, and cutting red tape in the container transport. So nowadays, for example, on average, the container ships spend in the port only 24 hours. And all those containers are moved to the lorries or to the train, and they are leaving the port within 1 or 2 days. So you can imagine if such a ship transporting 20,000 containers come to the port, what is the challenge facing the custom officers? Yeah, they have to select some of those containers that they suspect of transporting counterfeit goods, not only, also drugs and arms. However, the means at their disposal is X-ray. And maybe it's a quite effective manner to detect drug drugs or arms because of the shape of those goods. However, by very definition, counterfeit goods has to look alike the original one. So the only effective mean of detection the counterfeit goods is to open the container, unload it, find the counterfeit goods, and then release the goods that are original. But it is, of course, an enormous logistical challenge for them. So here we have some statistics about top container shipping companies. And I would like to focus in this part of the presentation of the growing role of China. Because this is industry which is very highly concentrated, with the top 10 firms accounting for over 80% of the market capacity. However, we can see that the third largest container shipping company nowadays is COSCO Group, which is the Chinese company. And there are some smaller ones that also play bigger and bigger role in the maritime transport. Also, this is the graph from the Financial Times, and it reflects the situation in 2015. So we can see that in those 15 years between 2000 and 2015, the share of the containers which passes through Chinese-owned or invested ports rose a lot, from 19% to 67%, and even more nowadays. And also in the specific report that we devoted to the maritime transport, we documented the investment of the Chinese companies in European ports. So here you can see all the investments or the stakes that were bought by the Chinese companies in European ports. And in gray, you have highlighted those ports that are related to nowadays with the majority stake of the Chinese firms. So effectively, those companies are responsible for managing the operations in ports, and some big ports like Piraeus, Valencia, or Bilbao. And of course, it's not. It is a safety and security threat for the European Union, because there is some possibility that those ports which are managed by the Chinese companies will not apply the same strict security measures, and they will not be so much interested in stopping transport from China looking for the counterfeits. However, there are also the commercial objectives behind this, because of course, if China is the major manufacturing producers in the world, they play major role nowadays in the shipments of those goods from China to the final destinations. And of course, if they own the majority stakes in the port, they are able to funnel those shipments to the ports that are owned by Chinese. And the case that illustrates this is Piraeus. Because between 2010 and 2020, the rank of Piraeus in UNCTAD port liner shipping connectivity index rose from position 62 to 27. So after the Piraeus port was bought by the Chinese company, it increased a lot the volumes of the goods which being transported through Piraeus. So conclusions from all this research is that the value of the counterfeit goods in international trade is high. And counterfeit affects almost all product categories. So we saw also, for example, fake bananas. Yeah, so sometimes it's as easy as to put the label of the company just to mislead the final consumers about the origin of the goods. Sometimes it's more complex. However, in general, the counterfeiters are able to counterfeit, to fake almost all products categories. And this may be especially problematic in case of goods posing health and safety problems. So we saw that counterfeiters are misusing many innovations and institutions which were developed to facilitate the legitimate international trade. And they pose additional challenges to custom officers and enforcement authorities. We saw the rise in the volumes of e-commerce. Of course, it's beneficial to all the clients because nowadays we are able to order goods with one click. However, it increases the volume of the goods shipped by post. And of course, you can imagine with the number of the parcels nowadays treated on the borders, how difficult it is for the custom officers to detect and stop the counterfeit goods. What we saw also is that growing control of main provenance countries like China in management of the key transport infrastructure. And also it poses additional challenges because enforcement authorities lack quick access to reliable information, helping them target suspicious transport. So our conclusion is that to some extent, we have to involve intermediaries profiting from this legitimate international trade to take more responsibility for detecting suspicious transport and sharing information with enforcement authorities. Thank you very much.